Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very good evening. This is Primetime Asia. I'm Muiz Datuk Paduka Haji Adnan. This week in Primetime Asia, a US-guided missile destroyer sails close to one of China's man-made islands in the South China Sea and draws an angry rebuke from Beijing, which says it tracked and warned the ship and called in the US ambassador to protest. A high-speed ferry traveling from Macau to Hong Kong is involved in a crash that led to scores of injuries. European and Balkan leaders agree on plans to manage flows of migrants through the Balkan Peninsula, committed to create 100,000 places in reception centres along the route from Greece to Germany. A second group of elderly South Koreans bid tearful goodbye to their relatives in North Korea after three-day reunions, which were the first since they were separated by the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. Kartini Knox has the details and more.
A US-guided missile destroyer sailed close to one of China's man-made islands in the South China Sea on Tuesday, drawing an angry rebuke from Beijing, which said it had tracked and warned the ship and called in the US ambassador to protest. The USS Lassen's patrol was the most significant US challenge yet to the 12 nautical mile territorial limits China claims around artificial islands it has built up in the Spratly archipelago, as Beijing exercises its growing maritime power. Washington's move followed months of deliberation by the administration of President Barack Obama and could ratchet up tension in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes and increase strains in US-China relations. A US defense official said such freedom of navigation patrols were expected to become more frequent. The US destroyer sailed within 12 nautical miles of Subi Reef, an artificial island built up by China in the past year. A Chinese-guided missile destroyer and a naval patrol ship shadowed and gave warnings to the US warship, according to law, China's defense ministry said, calling the US patrol a coercive action that seeks to militarize the South China Sea region and an abuse of freedom of navigation under international law. China's Vice Foreign Minister Zhang Yesui summoned US Ambassador Max Baucus, telling him that the patrol was extremely irresponsible. It earlier said the USS Lassen illegally entered waters near islands and reefs in the Spratlys without the Chinese government's permission. Pentagon officials say the United States regularly conducts freedom of navigation operations around the world to challenge excessive maritime claims. China travelled within 12 nautical miles of the US-controlled Aleutian Island about 6 weeks ago, the defense official said. The White House says Washington has made clear to Beijing, even during last month's visit by President Xi Jinping, that the United States would fly or sail anywhere that international law allows, and stressed the importance of the South China Sea for commerce. A total of 124 people were injured when a high-speed ferry vessel travelling from Macau to Hong Kong hit an unknown object in the water near Lantau Island last Sunday night, according to local media. The injured were sent to different hospitals, with 5 of them remained in a critical condition, 8 serious, 40 stable, 1 uncategorized, while the other 70 discharged as of Monday morning. The vessel lost power after the crash, which happened shortly before 1900 hours on Sunday. The ferry, with 163 passengers and 11 crew members on board, was towed to the government pier in central Hong Kong's financial centre after the accident. Passengers described chaotic scenes as people stumbled around in the dark, some bleeding and others with injuries on their faces, arms or legs. The Hong Kong government and staff from the Marine and Fire Services departments, the Marine Police, the Government Flying Service and the shipping company were involved to provide assistance. Hong Kong's Secretary for Transport and Housing, Anthony Chung, and Secretary for Food and Health, Ko Wing Man, visited some of the injured at Pamela Yude Nethasol Eastern Hospital. Chung expressed his sorrow over the incident, adding the Marine Department is investigating its cause. The oldest living giant panda, Bassi, will turn 35 years old in November. As part of her birthday celebrations on November 28th, the animal's keepers launched a campaign Wednesday in Fuzhou, capital of southeast China province of Fujian, where she lives now, to look for special people who have witnessed her years of life. The campaign will be carried out through the internet, seeking for people around the world who witnessed important moments of Bassi's life and inviting them to share their stories. Bassi is the oldest living giant panda so far in the world. 35 roughly equals the human age of 130 years old. Usually the average age of a wild giant panda is about 12 years old or 13 years old. In 1987, the US San Diego Zoo invited Bazzi for shows. Bazzi attracted around 2.5 million visitors during her 6-month stay in the United States and amazed many visitors by her performances such as acrobatics, riding a bicycle, shooting a basket and lifting a barbell. European Union and Balkan leaders meeting in Brussels agreed a 17-point plan to cooperate on managing flows of migrants through the Balkan Peninsula, the European Commission said earlier on Monday this week. Among measures agreed at a meeting in Brussels on Sunday, October 25th evening, were that 100,000 places in reception centres should be made available along the route from Greece toward Germany, half of them in Greece and half in countries to the north. The UN Refugee Agency would help establish them. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker told journalists after the meetings he'd commended the Greek Prime Minister for his commitment to increase reception capacity in Greece to 30,000 places by the end of this year, with the UNHCR to help provide at least 20,000 more places in Greece with the financial support of the others. The leaders also agreed that the EU border agency Frontex would help step up activity on the Greek-Macedonian border to ensure people trying to cross would be registered. The policy of simply waving people through must be stopped, he added, referring to agreements to cooperate and avoid unilateral national measures that have contributed to chaos throughout the region. The plan also says that efforts to facilitate return of migrants not in need for international protection will be stepped up as well, as cooperation on repatriation with Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Iraq and Pakistan. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, was also among the people invited to participate to the summit. He said the plan agreed on Sunday would benefit both the people in need and the European institutions. More than 680,000 migrants and refugees have crossed to Europe by sea so far this year, fleeing war and poverty in the Middle East, Africa and Asia, according to the International Organization for Migration.
Schweden und Niederlande gemeinsam sind nicht in der Lage, das alleine zu bewältigen.
The second round of reunions started last Saturday, October 24th, with 254 South Koreans crossing the heavily armed border into North Korea to be reunited with 188 family members separated for more than 6 decades. Participants were reunited at the resort of Mount Kumgang, just north of the militarized border, with children and spouses from whom they had been separated when the peninsula was divided at the end of the war. 88-year-old South Korean Lee Bok-sun was reunited with her son, 64-year-old Jung Gun-mok, who was abducted by North Korea decades ago. "I'll persistently live until we meet again," she said, telling him he should stay healthy and meet her again. After the emotional reunions, the South Korean family members exchanged final and tearful goodbyes with their North Korean relatives through the windows of the bus before it left the reunion venue. In the first round of reunions last week, 96 North Koreans and their families met about 390 people travelling from the south. The two Koreas, which are divided and remain in a technical state of war, agreed to hold the family reunions for the first time since February last year, after negotiating the end of a standoff at the military border in August.
Welcome back. About 100 demonstrators protesting the treatment of asylum seekers gather outside the company running Australia's offshore immigration detention camps as it holds a meeting. Strong winds blow off the roofs of houses during a storm in Queensland, Australia. Pakistan's disaster management authorities said on Wednesday that rescuers have reached all affected areas and expect no major damages or any drastic rises in the country's death toll following the magnitude 7.5 earthquake which hit neighbouring Afghanistan on Monday. A famous fort in India's Jammu and Kashmir state suffers heavy damage in an earthquake that shakes the northern part of the country, as well as Afghanistan and Pakistan. A rare flower bloom turns the arid desert of Atacama in Chile into a magnificent carpet of mauve-coloured flowers. Kartini Knox has these details and more. Stay tuned.
About 100 protesters on Wednesday held a demonstration outside a meeting of the company running Australia's offshore immigration detention camps, demonstrating against the treatment of asylum seekers. Many of them held up placards calling for the camps to be closed. Immigration is a sensitive issue in Australia, and 2 years ago the government reintroduced a policy of intercepting refugee boats and processing applications for visas on Nauru and Papua New Guinea. The program has come under renewed criticism since a Somali woman said she'd been assaulted in custody on Nauru. Immigration Minister Peter Dutton said on Wednesday she would return to Australia for medical treatment. Muhammad Ali Bakiri from Afghanistan was among the several rights activists to speak at the meeting. He said as a boy held on Nauru for 3 years from 2001, he regularly saw prisoners with mental disorders attempt suicide. Refugee advocacy group No Business in Abuse Executive Director Shen Narayanasamy said international laws and human rights have been violated. The company running the detention camps rejected suggestions its staff were involved in rights abuses on isolated Pacific islands as the United Nations stepped up criticism of the facilities. Transfield Company Chairwoman Diane Smith-Gander said all reports of abuses are taken seriously. Chief Executive Graham Hunt said the company had zero tolerance of mistreatment and rejected any suggestion Transfield staff were involved in abuse, saying they put the welfare of asylum seekers first. The United Nations has said an increase in assaults was being reported, and it was concerned about a lack of response from Nauru police. The company is about to finish a contract worth 1.2 billion Australian dollars for 20 months and is hoping to renew it for 5 years for an expected income of $2.7 billion. Storms struck Queensland's southeast on Tuesday, damaging homes and businesses in the area. The storms moved across Ipswich and impacted northern parts of Brisbane before weakening off the Sunshine Coast, local media reported. There were no reported injuries. In Fernvale, west of Brisbane, hail slightly smaller than golf balls pelted the area and strong winds ripped roofs off several homes. Many residents and local emergency services spent Wednesday cleaning up debris after the storm, which local media reported was like a Category 3 cyclone. One resident had most of his roof ripped off. Queensland Police Minister said the storm came and went rapidly. Hundreds of homes were left without power for more than 12 hours after the storm hit. More storms are predicted in the coming days. Pakistan's Disaster Management Authority say that rescuers have reached all affected areas and expect no major damages or any drastic rises in the country's death toll following the magnitude 7.5 earthquake which hit neighbouring Afghanistan on Monday. The National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, said that as of Wednesday, the quake had killed 266 people and injured 1,856 others in Pakistan. About 11,000 houses have been damaged in the country's northwest region. For the past 2 days, the Pakistani military and aid groups have been sending relief supplies to quake victims in all affected areas and have been working around the clock to repair damaged facilities and clear landslide-blocked roads. The NDMA and all associated departments are mobilising the best possible rescue and relief efforts to save human lives and ensure minimum loss of assets. The relief operations are in full swing. The survey has been completed. They've obtained the report from all concerned ministries and departments regarding reporting of any damage to the infrastructure, dams and other key buildings. Nothing had been reported so far, said the NDMA. The NDMA had so far distributed 13,000 blankets, 8,750 tents, and delivered 7 tons of food packs and 14 tons of bottled water. Further supplies will be sent to remote areas once roads are safely cleared and reopened. Monday's earthquake was centered in Afghanistan's sparsely populated Badakhshan province, which borders Pakistan, Tajikistan and China. A renowned fort in India's northernmost state suffered severe damage in an earthquake on October 26th. A major earthquake struck the remote Afghan northeast on Monday, killing more than 200 people in Afghanistan and nearby northern Pakistan, injuring hundreds and sending shockwaves as far as New Delhi, officials said. The death toll could climb in coming days because communications were down in much of the rugged Hindu Kush mountain range where the quake was centred. In India's Jammu and Kashmir state, one of the walls of Bhimgar Fort collapsed due to the tremors of the quake, while cracks had developed in various other parts of the structure. The wall on the backside of the famous fort has been completely damaged in the earthquake, said a police officer. The fort was originally built of clay and mud, but later reconstructed using stones by the royal family. Chile's Atacama Desert has turned into a mauve-coloured carpet of flowers, following a downpour of rain from the country's north that has seen the normally arid region turn to a psychedelic wonderland of shades of purple. This phenomenon takes place every 5 to 7 years, but this is the most spectacular blossoming the region has seen in the past 18 years. It comes after the heaviest rains to hit Chile's northern desert regions in 20 years. At least 28 people were killed in the torrential downpours, which caused mudslides and rivers to breach their banks. The large patches of blooms have radically transformed the Atacama Desert, 750 kilometers north of Santiago, into a rich tapestry of exotic flowers. The very intense rains in the normally arid north of the country helped the area to flourish, with more than 200 native species filling the desert with unusual scents and colors, local media reported. Acting Regional Director of Chile's National Tourism Service said this year's blooming had surpassed all previous ones, saying the desert had not such a large flowering in the past 18 years. Plant bank seeds, which had remained dormant for years, were stimulated by the rains, attracting birds, insects, lizards and rodents to the area. Raymond Cortes, who owns a plot of land in Valenar, called the phenomenon a miracle, as all the time he had been here, he has never seen what the grass looked like until now. And for Atacama's locals, its blossoming has become a source of pride, because it's something that does not occur in any other region of Chile nor in the world. Throughout the year, Atacama attracts tourists to its national parks, pristine beaches, spectacular mountainous landscapes and protected natural areas.
And that's it for this week's Primetime Asia. We'll be back at the same time next week with more news and features from the Asia-Pacific region. For more news, you can visit our website at www.rtbnews.rtb.gov.bn. I'm Muiz Datuk Paduka Haji Adnan, and wishing you a good week ahead and good night. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.